Are Instagram stories still relevant in 2021? Are they still worthwhile creating in 2021? Yes, they absolutely are, but only if you create them and share them effectively and strategically. Here's the thing. Instagram stories are a really great way of deepening relationships that you have with your existing followers. They're a really great tool to nurture those relationships with the people that already have some idea of who you are. They've already seen some of your grid content, and now they really want to get to know you better. And if you create stories in the right way, strategically, effectively, you can use them as a really great sales tool. But there is an art to sharing Instagram stories effectively, and I'm going to share some tricks today to help you really get the most out of Instagram stories so that not only can you share more about the behind the scenes, more about your brand story, more of the human behind the account, but so that you can also use Instagram stories to actually convert followers into customers and clients. So just before I jump into trick number one, don't forget to hit the subscribe and bell button so you never miss a new video when it drops, all about Instagram marketing. A new video goes live every single week. And now, without further ado, let's jump into trick number one. So trick number one is film your Instagram stories ahead of time. One of the biggest ways of sharing really effective Instagram stories consistently is by planning a little bit, outlining roughly what the stories are going to be that you're going to share for the week ahead. And if you can, batch filming some of them. Now, you might be sitting there thinking, but Instagram stories are best when they're in the moment. You know, they're more authentic then, they're more real. Yeah, I suppose that is true, but the fact is that isn't just realistic for most of us. And if you want to get into a habit of sharing not only consistent Instagram stories, but really well-structured, really effective Instagram stories, then filming them ahead of time is a really great way to do this. So my advice is choose how many Instagram stories you're going to post per week. Decide what your cadence will be. I recommend 4 Instagram stories a week. That's perfect. So decide, 4 Instagram stories a week, then get into a habit either the Sunday night before the week ahead or the Monday morning of that week. Decide what those ideas are going to be, decide what those stories are going to be, and then roughly outline them. When I say roughly outline, I mean, how are you going to open that Instagram story? What is your call to action going to be at the end? And what are the middle slides going to look like? Are they going to be you talking face to camera? Are you going to incorporate photos that you already have or that you need to take? Roughly, what is that story going to look like? And for those stories where okay, it's just going to be me talking face to camera and I'm going to annotate text over the top, why not film that ahead of time? No one will know that you filmed it a couple of days in advance. And if you wanted to film a couple of Instagram stories in one go, you could just change your setting, change your outfits, and there you go. Bob's your uncle, as they say in England. You have some really great Instagram stories done and dusted ahead of time. And that means that on those days that you're planning to share those Instagram stories, you don't even have to think. You've got them ready to go. Trick number 2 is to leave some time between your Instagram stories. Now, I don't mean leaving time between the individual slides. I mean leaving time in between one whole Instagram story and the next. So once upon a time, a lot of the advice about Instagram stories was to be pushing out Instagram story slides and Instagram stories as a whole all the time. Because if you're not pushing out Instagram stories round the clock every single day of the week, then it's going to harm your position in the story feed. You're not going to get seen by people. And these kinds of myths were percolating a lot online. In recent weeks, and I'm filming now in February 2021, I have had lots of conversations with people who have been reporting that when they leave a gap, maybe a day, maybe 2 days between one Instagram story and the next, they have noticed a big increase in their views and their engagement and their retention rate overall. So my advice would be test this. You don't have to be creating Instagram stories every single day. Have a break between your Instagram stories. And that's why I suggest having a cadence of 4 Instagram stories a week. That way you do have a break between them on 1 or 2 of the days of the week. And you never know, it might just help increase the overall performance of your Instagram stories. Trick number 3 is to use Instagram stories in a strategic way. One of my favorite ways to use Instagram stories is to use them as a way to start natural conversations with people in the DMs, not to sell to them, but just to open the door to a conversation with someone in a natural way that I might not otherwise have had. This is really a great way to combat just sliding into people's DMs cold, which can feel quite sleazy and slimy. This is a great way of engaging your followers who are already loving your content. They already know who you are. So, for example, think about an Instagram story that you might share next week. It could be a day in the life, or it could be a training. Let's go with the mini training example. You can use story stickers in a really strategic way. So you could open that Instagram story by saying, today, do you want to see training A or training B? Now, here's the thing. You don't need to wait for an answer to create that story. So you can carry on creating a story around training A. It doesn't matter. You can still have that sticker at the beginning. Carry on with the story, and then at the end, have a call to action. Did you enjoy that training? Now, with everybody that voted for training A, you can go back and engage with those people on that poll and start a conversation. Say something like, was today's training helpful to you? Do you have any questions off the back of the training that I can help answer? For everyone that answered training B, you can say to those people, damn, I'm sorry that today's training was training A, but you know what? You're in luck. I'm actually sharing training B in a few days' time. Have you got any questions around that training topic that I can factor into the training, that I can answer with that story on Thursday, let's say? Now you have started conversations with a whole bunch of people around your expertise, around the skill or the area that you know loads about, and you've broken down that barrier between account and follower. And now those people that you started conversations with, you've started with an open-ended question so you can have an open dialogue, a back and forth. And now in future, those people will feel so much more comfortable about sliding into your DMs to ask you questions in the future. This is golden, and this could really be the beginning of a great relationship that down the road turns into a customer or client. Trick number 4 is to only share 6 Instagram story slides within a story. Social Insider did research in 2019 about what the optimum number of slides in a story was, and their research found that it was 6. 6 slides to a story. That was the amount that retained the most amount of viewers for a brand. So when we're talking about that all-important retention rate, if you want to keep people engaged on your Instagram story, then don't make it too long. Tell your well-structured story within 6 slides. You can go a bit more than this or a bit less, but 6 is the sweet spot. And that is really going to ensure that you're telling a succinct, short and sweet story that is going to keep people engaged from beginning right through to the end. And trick number 6 is to make the most of fonts and features. Now, I talk about this a lot more in this video here, which is some Instagram story hacks that you might not know about. So go and check out that video after this one. But essentially, make the most of the features you have available, play around with the fonts that you have a go with some of the tools like the eraser tool. There are some really fun ways that you can liven up your Instagram stories. And the reason that this is so beneficial is that it will keep your followers engaged. When they see the same old kinds of stories shared again and again, it gets boring. Variety is the spice of life. And so if you can, within the parameters of your branding and your brand colors, if you can spice up your Instagram stories somewhat, you will help to keep people engaged and entertained. And just before I wrap up this video, I wanted to give you one final trick, because this is probably the most fundamental trick. It's not even a trick, I'd say. It really just is a fundamental part of a really great Instagram story strategy. And I'm just going to give you a flavor of it now, but I talk about it in much more detail in this video here. So go and check out that video after this one. But that is to make sure that your Instagram stories are structured, that they have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So let me show you that retention rate calculation that I mentioned at the top of this video. I'm going to put it on the screen now, and you can use this calculation to figure out what your retention rate is currently. So all you really need to know is the reach number of the beginning of your story and the reach number from the end of your Instagram story. Now, once you start getting into a habit of sharing well-structured Instagram stories with a beginning, a middle, and an end, knowing what these reach numbers are and really knowing with clarity what the beginning of your Instagram story is versus the end is going to be so much easier. If right now you're slightly in the habit of just throwing up content onto Instagram stories, you know, you're sharing a photo of your morning coffee and then maybe you'll share a grid post that you saw on someone else's account that you loved. If you're slightly in the habit of doing this right now, then knowing really clearly what the beginning and the end of your Instagram story is will be a little bit harder. But once you get into that habit of sharing structured Instagram stories, you will know this with certainty. And then you will know where the bar is. You will know what your average retention rate is and what you want to do to increase it. And that's all for this week's video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to hit that subscribe and bell button so you never miss a new video when it goes live every single week. If you have any questions about Instagram stories or anything else for that matter, don't forget to leave a comment down below. I love hearing from you and answering your questions. I will see you next week for a brand new video. Just before I go, don't forget to check out these two lovely videos after this one that I mentioned in this week's video. I'll see you next week. Thank you for watching. Bye, guys.